Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you here. And I'm just catching up. The chat box is already hopping. So that's what, yes, this is a new location. I've been recording in the morning time down in my husband's office. I have my own little desk area set up in there. But, he's working and me talking away is not very conducive to thinking, which is his job. So I am trying out a new spot, and I have one of my favorite paintings back behind me here, but it turns out that it reflected the screen, and so it was distracting. I had to take it down. Too bad. I know. So yes, I get all kinds of questions about break week, and I totally get a lot of them. Or most of them, all of them. Because we've been doing break weeks for the entire time we've been homeschooling, which is from the beginning. So kindergarten, and my oldest is in 9th grade now. So about 10-ish years now that we've been doing year-round homeschooling, 6 weeks on, 1 week off. And I love it. And I know it's recommended in Sarah McKenzie's Teaching from Rest. I think she calls it Sabbath schooling in there, but using that 6 on 1 off ratio model to help prevent burnout. And I have found that to be true this whole time we've been homeschooling. And I know the idea has been out there a long, long time, because I was homeschooled my whole schooling career. From kindergarten on, I was always homeschooled. And my mom used the 6 week on, 1 week off model for 3 or 4 years, somewhere in there, where most of us were elementary age kids. And I liked it then. And so I started using it myself, and we just have never stopped. So I will answer as many of the questions as I can. And I have a little bit of an outline to give us some background and the concepts and definitions first. And then I'll just work through the questions. So if you have something that you really want to make sure that I answer a question, then make sure it goes into that ask a question box. I think it's going to be right beneath me there where it says ask a question. You can click that and add your question there. I think if you use a question mark while you're chatting, it'll ask you, do you want to add this to the question box? And if you want me to see it for sure and talk about it, then you do. But of course, there's going to be a lot of great chat going on in the chat box too. So if you still want to ask the general everyone, then go ahead and put it in there, because I know there are a lot of you here too who have been using this and have a lot of wisdom and experience to share also. Yes, like Terry is here, and yeah, and even it's not only for homeschooling. I think it is especially good for homeschooling because homeschooling moms have a lot of different plates to spin, and the break week allows us to put a little spin on those things that we've had to let slide in order to keep the homeschooling going. But then there's the interval planning concept, which I love. And I put that together because of the year-round homeschool schedule. We'd been doing that for many years already. And I realized that I could use it for all of my plans and not just for homeschooling. So I called it interval planning, and it's basically taking 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever kind of fits your life, and planning in those kind of chunks. The shorter term, you kind of do the same kind of planning, the big thinking goals, that sort of thing that you would do at the beginning of a year for like a yearly planning, but you're only for that shorter amount of time. So I call that interval planning, and break weeks apply to homeschooling and to interval planning. And I make mine match up. because that break week is for the big term planning. And so I can take some time off from the homeschooling so that I have time to do that kind of thinking and regrouping. So yes. So hello, Haley and Stephanie. And actually another surprising area that I found the interval planning concept kind of confirmed was in a book that was written for the workplace. Mostly, it's a typical software designer, remote worker, computer guy, which my husband is, idea, which is breaking something down into smaller projects. Instead of the kind of corporate big picture, like we have to plan the entire process out before we begin, which is kind of analogous to a yearly plan or a 5-year plan. The software and web development is much shorter time frame. And saying, instead of figuring out where we're going to be in or what we want our end product to look like, we're going to get something out there that works. And then, you know how software is, right? You get new updates all the time. And it's like, and then you have this version and that version. They don't just put something out and that's the final product. They put something out and then, and then iterate on it. And so that's what an interval is for. It's to iterate. So my husband's several of the companies that he's been with over the years have used that. They usually call them sprints. And it's just kind of fun to try to parallel that in different applications. And so we're going to talk about applying it to homeschooling and applying it to other planning, life management, just our whole big picture. And then troubleshoot your questions. And oh my goodness, I just saw there 13. So I will try to talk fast. And so a break week then is in homeschooling. It's taking the week off of school. Pretty simple. On a break week, we don't do any school. Period. End of story. We aren't using it for catching up. We aren't using it for anything. Now, we don't count reading as school. So there's a lot of reading going on. Like during a break week where there's not school, kids do not have more screen time. It's the same amount of screen time as during the school week. And I think that that's a big part of it, a big help, because what the break week allows them to do is to have a life. It allows them to have an extended free time where they can play and create and do. And as we will get into with the questions, get into trouble and squabble with siblings and all the things that kids do in normal life, they're going to do during break week, probably more so. That's just a part of the gig. So I know that some people still do morning time because they consider that like a family devotional kind of thing. And ours really kind of is one, but we don't do morning time. We just don't do anything. The kids still have to do their morning jobs. So the morning starts off the same. We still do breakfast, then chores, then they're free. So we don't do morning time during break week. It's my time where I reset the morning time stuff. And my kids have their own agendas. So part of how this works out in your own home is going to depend on your personality, on your kids' personalities. So there isn't one right way for a break week to look. So maybe your break week still includes morning time because everyone loves it and you come together and it helps you give your week or your day that structure. That's awesome. But it's not a week for making progress. And it's not for checking schoolwork off the list. So we do not do morning time. But my kids really enjoy having their own time. They like to have their own, they usually do have their own agenda. And so they really enjoy having a week where their agenda has a bit more play. They can set the very next thing they're going to do. Their agenda for the day is not set by me. And I don't know, I guess the feel in our house is that morning time is an agenda item I am making happen. So it doesn't happen during break week, because that's the week where they can set their agenda for the day within reason. So break week is a catch-up week as far as not schoolwork goes. Everyone during break week has extra chores. So they don't have extra screen time. They do have extra chores. And that's just a part of the gig. That's a part of the gig of living in this house, is that we've got to keep on top of things. And that's not just my responsibility. That's everyone who's using the house. So part of break week is, making sure show and tell going on. Part of break week is making sure that, kids' closets are dealt with. That doesn't happen every break week, but these are the kinds of things where if I notice something that the kids really should be helping me with is, we will go through those closets and they will help with that. Or we will reorganize the playroom. We did that a lot more when almost everyone was younger and the toys would get, all mixed up and all everywhere. And in the corners, we would pull everything out and sort through all the bins and resort the toys and maybe rotate some out. That's the sort of thing that would happen on break week. And so then it's something where if I saw it during, say, week 4 or week 5, and, it could have been done then, it needed to be done then, but I could say, this is not the time for that. This is the time for me to prioritize getting the school done. And it's okay for this mess can wait. It can just live here. I have a time to deal with it. We will get to it at break week. And then we can trade that time for, swap school time for organizing time. So even though I'm not setting the agenda as much, we still do talk usually at the end of the last school day. So the Friday before break week or Monday morning, I'll say, okay, usually it's one extra job, maybe tacked on to their chores or maybe after lunch, but I'll let them know up front, like these are the things that we're going to do. And, I'll get their input for when they fit in. But they are helping catch up on the chores. And that is one of the main things that in my own mind, the break week is for, dealing with those things I just didn't have time to get to during the school weeks. Of course, I never can get to all of them. So I will do a brain dump the week before break week. Hey, Jen, too noisy. Okay, take that downstairs. So I will, just brain dump before break week, all the things that I really wish I could do, the things I would love to get done, and then pick. I can't do everything that I want to do, not during this. I can't do all the school even that I want to do every day. I can't do all the cleaning that I want to do even during break week, or, want to do. So I do the brain dump, just dump it all out. What are all the things that I feel the pressure up for right now? And then pick. And I pick, I got to look at the week and say, well, what? Probably 3, something like 2 or 3, pick the top ones. But then because it's a conscious decision and I've made those priorities, there's a lot more peace than if I just ran around trying to do as much as possible. And always feeling like it was never enough. Instead, I've made a deliberate choice for what to do with that break week. So a break week is for 3 things, whether we're talking about planning or homeschooling. There are 3 things that need to happen during break week, where we're taking time off of school, or if in our plans, we are ending one chunk of time and starting another chunk of time. So the break week is that kind of buffer week between blocks of productivity. So if it was analogous to a daily schedule, it would be a little piece of margin. Like you might have school hours, homemaking hours, you might have a block of time with a little bit of margin between them, hopefully, right? The break week is the little piece of margin between the chunks of time. So, and during that margin time, that buffer week, you use that for evaluation. So you look back over the previous interval and say, what was good, what was bad, because this is your time to iterate, to make a new version. So you had version 2.0, it's time to make it version 2.1. And you do that by looking back at what went well and what didn't go well and, adjust accordingly. And then planning. So evaluation involves looking back and planning involves looking forward. And you say, okay, what's coming up, and adjust your expectations, your plans, make those lists of what needs to be done, and just kind of get that mental grip on the upcoming next few weeks. And then, of course, some time set aside to prepare for that. Whether preparing is just putting the plans together, preparing might be making your meal plan. That's one of the ways that I prepare is to make my meal plan for the whole next 6 weeks. So I don't have to think about doing that during the normal working time. And maybe if you do freezer cooking, these are the chunks of time that you would say, okay, well, I'm going to do meals for, the next 6-8 weeks. Maybe I will make sure the bills are paid or the paperwork is caught up. That's not something that necessarily, depending on how much and what kind of paperwork you have going on, your interval is something that you can say, well, I'm not going to think about this every week. I'm going to do it this often, every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks. Again, it depends. The length of your intervals depends on just kind of how things are set up. So if filing. So you can say, I will deal with the paperwork, pay the bills, do whatever needs to be done with those papers. But then during my go time, during my work chunk of time, my work weeks, that's just going in a pile or this file folder or this, magazine folder. And I'm not going to worry about filing them. And then during break week, one of my things is going to be filing those papers. And then that relieves the mental pressure that you have, because instead of feeling like it's weighing you down and like, I should be doing that, but I don't have time to do that. I don't know when I'm going to do that. And so you kind of just feel, then the break week is the time where you can deal with those kind of things and say, well, this is my time for doing it and I can do it. And there we go. And I can just let it pile up without any guilt or worry be in between times, because I know I have this time reserved to deal with it. So those are the 3 big things that happen during break week: kind of a retrospective, a look forward, and a preparing time. Break week is not a vacation. It's good to plan at least one day of something fun, but it's not an entire week of just all fun and games. It is more so for the kids than for us. But like I said, even so, my kids know to expect extra chores during break week. There is time for rest, but the 6 weeks on, 1 week off helps us prevent burnout, not because that's a whole week of vacation and, putting our feet up and reading novels all week. It helps us with our sanity and not burning out, because it's a dedicated time to catch up on those things that are actually draining us and making us feel yucky and making us feel behind and guilty We have a time reserved to catch those things up. And a change is as good as a rest a lot of times. So if that idea, Charlotte Mason applies this with short lessons. She applies it to like be with subjects in a school day and says, if you change things up, you come to the next thing fresh. And this is a similar concept where we're taking some time off of the usual routine in order to do something different. And that different, the different routine, the different feel, the different activities refreshes us. Even we're still getting things done. We're still making progress, just a different kind of progress. And it is the change up that is the refreshing part of it. There should be, like I said, a day or a half day of something you wouldn't normally do. So that might be an extra play day or people over or going to a park that's farther away or some kind of activity. The last break week, we went ice skating for the first time. Those kind of things that just normally wouldn't fit. It's like, well, now we have time. We can go do that. Sometimes we will take a whole day trip, but if you say you have a family vacation week, that's not a break week. It's a vacation. So, it's like you need a little bit of a break day or two on both sides of a vacation because you have to recover from a vacation too, right? So, you need to plan those times and not equate break week with vacation week. Oh, good. I'm glad it's helpful. I was just losing my train of thought. So the break week is a buffer margin time for taking care of things that need to be taken care of and planning and adjusting what needs to be adjusted. So you can push through your work weeks and get things done. If you have a question, you're going to have to wait about half an hour. Okay, go do something. So the vacation is something different entirely. So if you have a vacation planned, make sure and give yourself a day or two on either side of that as a break time, the time to pack and then the time to unpack. So just like you need the packing time for a vacation and the unpacking time on the vacation, it's kind of like doing that same thing. The break weeks between the terms are that same kind of thing where we're packing and unpacking. We're cleaning up the mess from the work that happened, which was good. And then we're preparing for what's coming next. If you have anything bigger that needs to happen, I will plan any dentist trips, haircuts, those kind of appointments. Those happen during break weeks. And I will postpone, it's like whatever, I don't just automatically take whatever date. For the most part, I will take whatever orthodontist date because those happen more regularly and they don't like to be postponed. But for a dentist, a haircut, those sorts of things, those go during break weeks. So I have them on my calendar. I put them on my calendar and for the whole year because I plan them out at the beginning of the year. And then I put them on my Google Calendar right away when I'm doing my school planning so that when I am, at the doctor's office, at the dentist's office, and we're scheduling the next one out, I can say, well, how about 2 weeks after that? Can we do it anytime on that week? It's usually not a big deal. There's a difference between vacation time and break week. Although there is more refreshment time, there's more time for reading, there's time for an extra fun activity, maybe some kind of outing. But for the most part, it's cleaning up and preparing to move forward and taking just a buffer time. And it's also not a break from parenting. So I know this is going to address a lot of the questions that I saw before this got started. Break weeks, we still have kids during break weeks, right? we might be taking a break from school. We might be taking a break from a project that we're working on, but we are not taking a break from parenting. We are not taking a break from eating ourselves or from feeding other people. So these aren't things that we are taking a break from. Those might be, when we're worn out or tired, we might say, I just need a break from cooking or cleaning or whatever. But that's not what these break weeks are actually about. The break weeks are, in a way, more for doing more of those things, those real life things. Okay, girls, please go downstairs or to your room. People still have to eat. People still have to be parented too. They are going to get into sibling squabbles. They are going to need direction. They are going to make more messes because they're not doing school. They're going to play more. So that means more messes. And that is a part of the gig. That's, and really, it's a feature, not a bug. So when we see that as a problem, that means that the problem's with us in our own heads and our own hearts. The break weeks are to give the kids a break from their school and to give them the free time that lets those lessons settle and come out in expression, like their own drawings, their own play times. It gives them, it's kind of like a field that needs to be fallow for a time. It helps more growth happen later. The break week, that means that they will be making more messes. They might be fighting more, but those are the real life experiences that we kind of need to make room for. And so break week is a way to make room for them. Because sometimes if we are in control the whole time, we're directing, we're making sure things are happening like we do on a school day, there are then character aspects or life aspects that aren't happening. So it's a big part of it is just our expectations going into it and not thinking, okay, this is the time for everyone to leave me alone. It's not. It's easy to get into that mentality, but that's a bad mindset. It's a bad attitude. And I've been there. I understand it. I know it. I'm speaking from experience. When we feel that way, the problem is us and not the kids. So we need to see it as seeing what they do with their time. And it's a diagnostic time. So if we go hands off a little bit, we aren't directing and making sure our agenda is happening with that, that they aren't staying on task. We haven't given them a checklist for the day and they aren't working through anything. They have free time. They have a wide array of options, outdoor time, building forts with all the blankets all over the house. There are things that they can do. And then we can see, what do they do with that time? And we can do that masterly inactivity thing of just stepping back and watching. And that gives us insight into them as persons, as their personality and their needs and their strengths. And I think that we can parent better and make a better plan moving forward when we have that time to see, okay, I've been teaching them, I've been reading to them. If they have 3 hours all to them, where they can do anything, are they not able to be self-directed? They can read, but they aren't reading and they don't want to read. The only thing that they can think of doing is something that involves a screen. They won't stay outside for longer than 10 minutes. These are all real situations that we notice happening. And they aren't, when we notice these things happening, it's not like, well, so there you go. You failed. You're bad. The end. These are then things we can, pieces of information that we have that we can use in parenting and teaching for the future. So it's like, okay, if I see it's a beautiful day and my child who is, at least 5 or older, toddlers and younger need constant parental interaction usually. But, they're 5, 6 or older and they can't spend more than 10 minutes by themselves or 10 minutes outside. Then I can say, okay, well, maybe we need to spend more time together outside, and maybe they need a project. Maybe they need a hobby. Maybe they need more friends. Maybe they're super extroverted and they just have no outlet for that. So you start troubleshooting and looking at the situation. And I think that unless they have this time, that's not directed and organized by a grown-up, there are a lot of things that we don't see and we don't know, that they might not even know. That they need these experiences. I tell my kids, well, I think it's good for kids to be bored. So I'm sorry you're bored. I'm not actually sorry you're bored. I think it's good for you. If you really want me to give you something to do, you can mop the floor. You can scrub the walls. It's not my job. Mom's job is not to play. Mom's job is to make sure things are resolved as needed, and that you have regular meals and clean clothes. And I've given you a lot of options. And if you don't think that there are a lot of options, you can go take a nap. And letting them maybe spin their wheels a little bit. That's part of, I think it's a good life experience. And then it's just part of the benefit that break weeks give. And then as you do them, it's not just like you can start with a 8 or 10-year-old to give them a break week. And the very first one, it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be trial and error and learning and it being uncomfortable or awkward or not what you thought it was. We have break weeks that are not what we had hoped all the time. But in the grand scheme of things, they are very helpful. So the break weeks, a change in activity is as good as a rest. The real rest, if we really feel like we need a break, there might be a time or a place for taking, go a church women's retreat or your own planning retreat, or just a day, ask your husband for a day and don't spend it shopping or somewhere busy and active and bustling, but somewhere quiet. And, we can look into those kind of things. But if you feel like you really need rest and a break, the very first thing you should look at is, are you taking a weekly Sabbath? It's like, well, let's start with what the Bible directly commands and talks about, and that is setting aside the Lord's Day as a day of rest and gladness. And that's the break weeks aren't giving us the rest that we need for our souls. The weekly celebration, the weekly setting apart of the Lord's Day is the rest that God's promised us. So that's the one that we should take advantage of. The break week is still, things are still happening. It's just a different kind of work. And then we see how they're using their free time. And I have found many times when my kids were stuck up against a wall on, some math concept that it was just not going through, or they were super burned out on the drill that we needed, or there was maybe, whether it's handwriting or spelling or some other subject that we're just butting heads against. Then the break week comes, and it breaks a habit. And sometimes that's a good thing, right? Because we easily get into bad habits. And so when the school day there are these things that come up, these hurdles, these obstacles, and we can get into, as parents, a rut on how we handle it. The kids get into a rut on how they handle it, not well. And the break week it's a planned schedule that's not like the fallout from an explosion. It's a planned time off, and it gives everyone some space and distance. And there have been a lot of times where there was an obstacle, there was headbutting, and we come back after a break week and it's totally fine. I mean, we start with review. We start maybe a little bit farther back than where we left off, but review is always good. And then we can just move forward, and it's some switch has been flipped. It's pushing the reset button. It's pushing the restart button. So if there's been obstacles in the homeschool day and you're like, we can't stop doing this because we're behind or whatever, like, actually, try it and see. Because in a lot of ways, it can be like a reset button that just gives the relationship a break, gives the mind a break. And when they come back, I was like, oh, I was making this a big deal in my head. And, I dropped those emotions. Those emotions they're not here anymore. And so I can actually do this. Of course, there's the flip side of that. And yes, the first day back after a break week is usually a little bit harder. But you know what? That's good life experience too. So it's not like if we just did school all of the time, everyone would always have a good day. That's like, at least I know when to plan for having a rough startup day. And really, in the end, I think that we make more progress, and we're able to push through a lot of days that feel like, I just don't want to do school. Like, we have a whole week of, I don't want to do school, and we have a whole week of not doing school coming up, so I can do it today. It's kind of that postponing and business before pleasure, where we know if we say, I just don't want to do school today, I can tell myself, I can tell the kids, or now they tell them their own selves or each other, well, this is a school day, and that day off school that you want, it's coming. There's always one coming. There's always one not that far off, because we take one every 6 weeks. So it helps with that work ethic and pushing through. What break weeks look like are different in different seasons. So what break, when we take that time off of school, now that I have a high schooler, a middle schooler, 2 elementary lesson kids, and a little girl learning how to read. Okay, guys, go play. Nope, I will answer your questions after I'm done. Did you already have 2? Yeah. Then you can't have more. Where was I? When we take school off now, we are really taking off school. Like, feels great, because there is so much happening during a school day. Back when my oldest was just in kindergarten and I had a bunch of babies, it wasn't really changed. Like, it wasn't that different. It was just the time where I could do something different. When it was mostly in that early elementary preschool years, then the break week was the field trip week, or the craft or the painting or the something that's like, I don't want this to be a regular, like maybe this should be regular, but I don't want it to be an everyday sort of thing. It's like break week. That's what break weekers are for. So we can go to that park on that, and that takes us longer to get to, or we can do the picnic. We can do the whatever is the thing that's like, I don't want this to be a normal part of our days, but we should do it every once in a while. So break week. So a lot of times when, and then the other thing, when everyone is really little, needs change faster. So, this year where my youngest is 5 and my oldest is 14, I could plan the whole school year and we're just chugging along on that plan because, I was able, I have experience. The older kids are older. I knew what needed to be done for a year's worth of school, planned it out. And for the most, we're just doing the plan. When everyone's younger, it's all up in the air all the time. Because in a school year, if you have a baby, then things are going to be different. Newborns change every 3 months. You never know when your toddler is going to give up a nap and totally change your day. They're just, the younger the kids and the more younger kids there are, the faster the situational circumstantial needs are. So the 6 weeks is that time where it's like, okay, I'm going to make a plan, not for the whole school year. I'm going to make a plan for the 6 weeks. And then I have a reevaluation time built in. So during that week, we can just do, well, we're just going to have a book tea party, or we're just going to listen to an audiobook and paint this week while I evaluate, okay, what's going on now? When is nap time? How long is it? What do people need and what's next? So the break week is really that evaluation time and that built-in time to iterate, where instead of, you have a bad day and you think, I know what will help. I will totally scrap all of our plans and start over from scratch because I had a bad day. You can, nope, I've got time built in to evaluate and adjust, and I'm going to wait it out and just push through. And that saves us from a lot of just spinning our wheels and trying to turn to a plan when we just need to say, well, tomorrow's another day, and go at it. Okay, so I have been totally trying to say what I wanted to say without even reading the comments. And I feel like I'm missing so much good stuff. So I'm looking forward to looking at the chat log. Now there are 20 questions, and I'm going to just, hopefully I've touched on a lot of these already. So what does a break week look like when the kids are all little and we're just easing into the school routine? So we just talked about that a little bit, and I see that some people have already answered this. So it means that's your time to adjust. One of the things I did when everyone was mostly little was checked out library books during that break week. So we do I would look for, say, okay, what kind of library book should we be checking out now? I'm going to make sure that we have, an art book, a science book, a bunch of new picture books. And just those were the kinds of things where if I was planning in a chunk, I didn't do that every single week. I did that every term. And, partly it depends on how long your library lets you have things out. But I was able then to say, okay, we're going to check out library books for this term. And these are the stories that we're reading this term, and then change those up. So I would freshen things up every 6 weeks. We would rotate toys during break week. So there were fresh toys. Not everything stayed out all the time. Sometimes some things were put away and some things were out. The break week is when we would do something like a field trip or something like that. The art, that kind of thing might happen during break week. So it was a little bit more of the flexible time and the planning prep time and the time to evaluate where we were and what needed to change based on people's needs at the time. Okay. Alana, since I'm not constantly making sure the kids have something to do or checking on what they're doing, things can get a little crazy and destroyed in every other part of the home, and it makes it impossible to complete my work for the week. Break week is fun for them, but more work for me. Yep. You got it. Some things you do to keep your kids behaving busy while you do what you need. That's going to depend, there's not like an easy answer there, because different kids' personalities and your situation really affects that. Like right now we have friends on the street and they're following the same schedule. So my kids play with their friends a lot. So sometimes, that's good because they are active and happy and they have things to do. It's great for my little extroverts. But sometimes that means I have 10 kids here, or my friend who her break week, a lot of times they're at her house. So she'll have, 10, maybe 13, because there are other neighborhood kids at her house. I was like, well, there are things that we can do that are really better when there's no one around, but that's realistically going to be pretty rare occurrence. And then it's like, well, I can do this or that project with the chaos. If you aren't doing EHAP, where everyone's helping clean up at the end of the day, then that would be a good thing to practice. I don't know if there's someone here that could find the link to that EHAP tidying up post, but kids have to be ready and on board and practiced in picking things up at the end of the day. And so then the day can get crazy. They can build their blanket forts. They can get out all the train tracks and all the whatever, but they know that they're going to help put it away at the end of the day, because that's just normal life. So if you have normal life habits that really need to be worked on, if you need chore training, break week is the week to do that, to say, okay, I'm going to teach you this week how to clean the bathroom, and we're just going to do it every day together, or we're going to practice cleaning up together. So break week is for real life training in a lot of different ways. That's really what a lot of it boils down to. And so that means it's going to take, it's not going to be a fun week for you or for them, but especially for you, it's a work of a different kind week. So the chores still happen. The morning chores still happen. The afternoon chores still happen. Although, yes, exactly. It's hobby week and you have to clean up after hobbies. But during break week, I might give exceptions. We will usually EHAP every day. But if they say spend the whole day building a block and railroad city, then I'll say, okay, clean up everything around that, but you can leave that out and we'll put like 2-3 days, whatever. We'll put a time on it. Like it will be cleaned up, but because we aren't doing school, we don't have people coming over because we host classes too. This can stay out. And yeah, it's a break from the book work, but so that there is time for that. Yeah, it's an unschooling week. There you go. It does take training and practice. What should break week look for me when my kids' routines don't change? Like we have piano lessons, and piano lessons don't follow our same school. So we still have lessons on a break week. They still have to do piano practice on break week too. And I think someone else asked something here, like they do a co-op or whatever. One thing you can do is just look at that co-op schedule or your lesson schedule and kind of plan around it a little bit. If there are off weeks, like take those as off weeks. But it's still your reevaluation time that you need to reserve some time for, and that's what break week is for. So even though other things might still be happening, it can still be a break week. So break weeks are not just for homeschool. Like you can look at my posts and my podcast season on interval planning. And that's all about how to use a break. Basically, your break week is your buffer week to look back and look forward and make adjustments as necessary. So it's your set aside reserved planning time to think through everything again and kind of get everything cleaned up. A lot of times planning, whether it's your planner or an app that you, like a task management app, it kind of grows weeds where it's like, it just kind of gets messy. Entropy happens in a planning system. So break week is the time to pull the weeds, to clean up the system, file the papers, file the Evernote notes, scan the documents, those kind of upkeep, clean up things. Break week is when those happen. Do you have longer breaks for summer or Christmas? Yes. We take half of May and all of June off, and also Thanksgiving through New Year. A rect break week or rect interval, if you get influenza, you get sick, that is the project for the interval. And you start up again when you can, just like real life. So really break weeks and all that, the whole system is to set aside times when you can have them, but it's really a way to build in time to handle real life and to do real life. So sometimes real life just happens like that. Sometimes getting sick is part of real life. And so just got to roll with it, roll with the punches and do the right next thing. We will just pick up where we left off as we can. So if we got sick during school, then we're off school. We will still take the break week because we probably really need that reset to catch up on laundry or whatever. And we'll just pick up where we can. Let's see. Keeping motivated. Oh, that one really isn't about break week. And I'm already twice over the length I was thinking. Co-op follows the school calendar. Okay, we talked about vacations versus break week. Really, you need a break day or two on either side of a vacation. Transition from a normal school schedule to year-round. Let's see. So it depends on what your kids would revolt against. My kids love having weeks off when everyone else is in school. So if they're older, if they're say double digits or older, definitely bring them on board and show them the pros and cons and do it together. Don't just make it a change from on high, but bring them on board with the planning and, making plans for what the break weeks might look like. The brain dump on what kinds of things we might do, what projects I want to get done during break week. I will do the weekend before break week. So weekly review. The weekly review before break week. And usually I'll start it earlier in the week because I'm so excited that break week is coming. So anytime I'm like, oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that. So I just have, you have to have an ongoing brain dump list going on. Here we go. Major school planning I do in the summer. So we end in May. So most of May and the beginning of June, I do almost all of my school planning. Yes, kids get extra training. It's kind of happened along the way for us since we've been doing break weeks and this schedule from the beginning. So it's been gradual, but yes, definitely kids need help figuring things out. They need time to be bored. And so just don't be afraid of letting them be bored and saying, I'm sorry, you have nothing to do. Better find something. Not my job to keep you busy all the time. Go keep yourself busy. I think that's really, really good for the kids. If any extracurriculars, musics, all those kind of things that are on the calendar still happen. Wrong to use break week as an incentive for teenagers who may need it to get through schoolwork. I would say that's what Saturdays are for, if possible, because I think that it's really good for teenagers to have project and hobby time to start forming those lifelong habits of how we use leisure and to get some practice with that. Catch up work at our house often has to be done on Saturday. Or, you can't play with your friend this afternoon. Like there are free times during the school week, and you can't go do XYZ until your school is done. So it's better. And I find it a lot easier to stay on top of that when we are staying on top of it, like every day, every week. So it doesn't become an overwhelming, a week's worth of catch-up work. By the time we're at that point, like there are major meltdowns, and it's happened. It's definitely happened, but it's much better to say, nope, you can't go to fencing lessons or your club or whatever until your schoolwork is done. Your schoolwork's not done to a satisfying level. Sorry. Yeah, well, you should definitely get your husband's input on schedules and take his perspective into account, because a lot of it's tricky, because a lot of times, we're all into this homeschool world where people are talking about unconventional methods and making it work. And a lot of times husbands are skeptical of unconventional methods. But you know what? A lot of times it's with good reason. And, we need that dialogue and that conversation back and forth to realize, well, there are valid concerns here, and what if, and talk through those things and come up with your own plan that's workable for your family, and really listen to your husband's feedback and concerns, because a lot of times they see things that we don't, because we're all immersed in it. So it's not just that we're all immersed in it so that we know it all, and they have an outside perspective that they don't really know what's going on. They are not in it, and they are still they still care. So it's actually a very valuable opinion, and good to work through with them. Okay, so those are the questions. Whew. And in 2 minutes, I need to be recording a Scully Sisters episode with Pam and Brandy. So thank you guys so much. This has been a lot of fun. And the questions was up. I didn't even see him on there. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that was very helpful.
Bye. Bye. Did they hear me?